I'm Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be creating your perfect life. Well, I've got an email here from a viewer who is going for the things that he wants in life. He's obviously struggling and having a difficult time, but he's got a lot of courage, and I think it's pretty cool. So I wanted to go through his email and point out some things with you. But before we get into it, I got a quote I'd like to share with you. And it says, "Your thoughts and actions will shape your destiny. You can either choose to find value and happiness in your struggles, or let your struggles define who you are and make yourself miserable. The amount of effort is the same. It's simply a conscious choice. It's easy to be happy and grateful when you realize your dreams and have the success you've always wanted. However, you can't succeed without first going through your struggles and overcoming the obstacles that most certainly lie in your path. The average person never knows true success and happiness because they let their fears run their lives and inhibit them from taking the action they know they need to take. You're going to end up somewhere in the future. Where you end up is a direct result of what you choose or choose not to do. Doesn't it make sense to choose something to take action upon that's emotionally compelling to strive for, rather than just settle for a life of mediocrity and misery?" So let's get into his email. He says, "Dear Coach Corey, I appreciate what you do, and I find the nature of your content very mature compared to the other stuff being tossed around the life coaching industry. I felt like sharing a story with you. Perhaps you will find it interesting. I am currently struggling in starting my own business. It's a little bit tough, but I find that there is light at the end of the tunnel. The reason I find it tough is because after losing my last job, I ended up with barely any money and am living with my parents. That's not a lot of fun. I've been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And sometimes you got to do that. I mean, I didn't move out until I was 21 years old. And I mean, I spent a lot of years struggling. It's like I remember after I got my divorce, which I wrote about in my book, and I was in my late 20s. I moved in with my best friend, and he had, I think it was a 4-bedroom house, but he just bought the house a few months before, and so he was pretty much broke. He had enough for furniture for a living room and a TV and stuff, and he had his bedroom set, and all my furniture was still in the house that I owned with my future-to-be ex-wife. And so there were no dressers and nothing in my room, and all I did was I slept on it was about 4-inch foam mattress for a year. And since there were no dressers, I had some of my clothes hanging up in the closet, and the rest of the stuff, like my underwear and socks, was literally on the floor in piles because everything else that I owned was back at the house that I had owned with my wife. And I didn't give a shit. I was happy because I was out of the construction industry working for Syntex Rooney, and I was working in real estate during the day, and I also had my business of buying, fixing, and selling single-family homes, foreclosure-type properties. And so I was loving it. I was totally excited. I felt like I was free for the first time. Obviously, I was free from that relationship that I really shouldn't have gotten into in the first place. And to me, it was a means to an end. And I think it was about a little over a year, but actually the two of us, he ended up letting his mom move into his house, and then we actually moved a little closer to Orlando. We got an apartment together, and that's when I started getting furniture and stuff again, and because I was doing well in real estate at that point. But sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to bite the bullet. And as you may have heard me talk about before, I mean, I went from making $500,000 a year to liquidating everything. My $2.5 million office building, I sold both my houses, I got rid of my car, I got rid of my boat, got rid of my jet skis, I sold all my furniture, all my paintings, everything I had, because I could no longer afford a $20,000, $25,000 a month nut. Because when you go from making $500,000 a year to zero, because you start over completely, not only are you paying your normal bills to live, but anything that you spend figuring out your business model to experiment with, that's sucking away money from your nest egg. And so it's just like money's flying out the door. So I was trying to reduce my monthly overhead to as little as possible. And it sucks to sell your $1 million office building and to get rid of that nice house you had in the lake and your boat and your jet skis and all those nice toys and things that I literally spent 15 years of my life acquiring to start over with a new dream, because I knew, because I created several businesses, successful businesses before, that it always takes longer than you think it's going to take, and it always takes more money. I figured, worst case, I'll figure this shit out in 2 years. Well, it actually cost me, it almost took 4 years, a little over 4 years for me to figure out my business model and how to market myself and package up my services and what I can do to help people when I became a full-time life coach. And so there was about a period of about 10 months that I worked a job waiting tables because I was getting to the point where I was going to run out of money. And so I needed to keep experimenting, keeping pay-per-click campaigns going, keep paying my web developers. And so I took a shitty part-time job in a sports bar. I mean, you imagine going from making $500,000 a year and living in a $1 million lake house to making a couple $100 a night, working 3 or 4 days a week. It wasn't a lot of fun. It was frustrating as hell, but I had a passion for what I was doing, and I knew eventually I would figure it out. I just had no idea it was going to take 2 years, but I knew from my past experience starting businesses that it always takes a lot more money than you think it's going to take, and it usually takes twice, sometimes 3 times as long as you think it's going to take. So however long you think you're going to be at your parents' house, you might want to double that. And however much money you think it's going to take in order to figure your business or your business model out, you should double or triple that as well, because that's the reality of the situation. And most people, because they don't choose something that they're that's really emotionally compelling to them, they quit and they give up as soon as things get hard because they're like, oh, I don't want to live with my parents. This sucks. Let me just go out and get a mediocre job that'll pay the bills. And then 10 years later, they're still working a shitty job and they just kind of limp through life because they don't have the patience to stick with things and see things through. And so I salute you for having the courage, and I honor you for that. I think that's awesome that you have the balls to do it, because the average person in this world does not have the balls to do that. So he says, I'm currently struggling and starting my own business. It's a little tough, but I find there's light at the end of the tunnel. And the reason I find it's tough because after losing my last job, so he says, luckily, he says, I'm covering my own expenses and I'm even supporting my parents at times. I don't regret it. And he said, listen to what he says. He says, quitting the 9-to-5 slavery system, or the matrix as I like to call it. Yeah, because I could have gone back into the construction industry and made a hell of a lot more money than I would have working part-time waiting tables, but I had a life coaching practice during the day, and so if I went to work for somebody else full-time, I wouldn't be able to coach people during the day, or I'd be doing it late at night, and that just was not acceptable to me because I had become used to being my own boss at that point. So I figured, hey, you know what? I'll work Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights when I've got the extra time to do it and just bite the bullet and suck it up, because I didn't want to run out of money and have no money left at all. So he says, the reason I quit my job was because they were downsizing and I was going through depression due to past problems in my life and a lot of stupid mistakes, which I'm still struggling from. I feel quitting allowed me to put my life and health, mentally and physically, together. He says, I work out almost every day and I'm very careful with my diet, and I find that I am dominant in my family, and whenever I feel down or feel great, it reflects on them. I crossed a huge stage in my life where I never felt this fulfilled and mature despite the downfalls, which are normal parts of life. Let me read that again, what he says. He says, I crossed a huge stage in my life where I never felt this fulfilled and mature despite the downfalls, which are normal parts of life. And the reason he feels this way is because he's chosen something that's emotionally compelling. Just like what I had done numerous times, whether it was in my 20s when I was getting into the real estate and the construction industry, or when I was in my mid-30s and had done very well in real estate and construction and the mortgage business, to start a brand new business, the life coaching business, which was something that's really just a hobby of mine that I've been using and learning and studying successful people like Tony Robbins, for almost 2 decades of my life. And I'm just really trying to help myself and helping my friends, helping my employees with it. And what started out as a hobby grew into this full-time business, obviously. It's doing very well that I have today. He says, it's hard to keep a smile when times are tough, but fighting every day for a better tomorrow is somehow fulfilling. That's why you got to choose something that's emotionally compelling, because if you were just chasing something to chase money, you would have quit a long time ago and got a job that paid you more money so you wouldn't have to live with your parents and struggle. However, you have a compelling vision for your future, because it's easy to be happy, just like I said in the quote, happy and excited and grateful when you're making lots of money and you're doing what you really love and you're getting to come and go as you please, travel around the world, stay in 5-star resorts, going below $7,000, $8,000 on a Rolex watch just because you can. It's easy to be grateful when you're in that kind of place, but it takes you a lot of years to get there, and most people are not willing to pay the price, or their fears are just so overwhelming that to them it's easier, it's more emotionally compelling. Because like you probably heard me say, one thing I learned from Tony Robbins 20 years ago is that people will do more to avoid pain than they will do to gain pleasure. So he says, though I feel I'm not living a life that is considered normal compared to other people. At the end of the day, other people, they're not going to understand your motivations for why you're doing it. Why you're doing it is totally dependent upon what you choose to do, or the meaning that you choose to give things. And that's all that really matters. As long as you're doing something that makes you happy, that's all that matters, because people are going to say, you're an idiot, oh, that's stupid, go get a real job, what's wrong with you? But when you succeed and you're making lots of money, like, hey man, I got this business idea, you want to invest in it with me? Hey, why don't you give me a job, and I'm your friend, we're buddies, we know each other, and you'll get all kinds of shit like that. And it's like, it's like, if you're not there for my struggles, don't expect to be there to share in my successes. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. Like the first time I went through that in my 20s, it's like everybody's talking down on me, making fun of me. And then when I succeed, everybody wants to be my best friend. It's amazing. It's just like what Oprah says. She says, everybody wants to ride with you in the limo, but a true friend will take the bus with you when your limo is broken down. He says, I barely go out as I barely have any friends or social contacts. And I used to hang out with poor quality friends and acquaintances and found out that they were holding me back, so I'm glad I cut them off. Yeah, the quality of your life is going to be in direct proportion to the quality of the people who you consistently spend your time with. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the expectations of your peer group. And so if your peer group, they don't have really high expectations for themselves, they're certainly not going to encourage you and have anything positive to say when you're striving for something that just seems totally out of reach for them. He says, I feel this might be unhealthy to live this way. There's no other way to live, in my opinion, brother. He says, I don't need friends or girlfriends to feel better about myself. Yeah, you gotta find happiness in your own life, because if you think a girlfriend or money or something outside of yourself is going to make you happy, even when you get those things, you'll realize you're still not happy. You've got to find a way to enjoy the struggle and enjoy the process, because you might be at it for a decade before you really are crushing it financially the way that you want to. He says, I believe firmly that I'm in charge of my health, mental and physical, and that to help others, you have to help yourself first. True, it's just like Zig Ziglar said. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. He says, I don't see people that much besides a couple of friends whom I only sit and discuss work and life with. I feel I'm getting used to being isolated from social life to the extent that it might become a habit and a norm, which doesn't seem right. Yeah, when you're in that and you're going through the struggle, that's what's your reality. But at the end of the day, when you've got money you can afford, go out and just do the best you can. As long as you're grinding it out day in and day out, that's all you can do. And when you go to bed at night, just be grateful that you gave it the best effort you can. Tomorrow's a new day, and so have peace when you lay your head down on the pillow at night. He says, plus you keep mentioning that you need to keep in touch with people and keep experiencing people to grow your social skills and become a better person. Absolutely. He says, I hope I didn't write too much. I understand you get plenty of mail. Absolutely. So it's a great email, man. Thanks for sharing. And just keep fucking grinding out, dude. And when weak people try to tear you down and tell you you're an idiot, fuck them. If they had a set of balls, they'd be doing what you're doing. But they ain't you. They'll never understand your motivations and why you're doing what you're doing. So just keep plugging along, man. You will get there. So if you got a question or a challenge or a situation you'd like to get my help with personally, the quickest way is to go to my website, click the products tab, and book a paid phone coaching session with yours truly. And I will talk to you soon.